Mōrena koutou. There's nothing formal to do, so we just go straight into continued hearings on the annual plan. And I'd like to welcome our first submitter who's online, Adelaide Gwynn from the Cancer Society Wellington Division. You have 10 minutes, including time for questions, so I'll just go straight to you, Adelaide. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Ata Māori koutou ko Adelaide tōku ingoa. I am Adelaide and I'm a Health Promotion Advisor at the Cancer Society Wellington Division. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today and to share with you our recommendations for your 2023 and 24 annual plan. We have identified in our recommendations a number of areas of opportunity for the implementation of cancer prevention approaches. Councils are uniquely positioned to protect the health and well-being of communities, where the positive impacts of this can be seen at a population level and for years to come. Communities look to their councils to make decisions in their best interests, and we ask that you, Wellington City Council, use your position to work towards an Aotearoa with less cancer and healthier futures for all. Aotearoa has the highest death and incidence rates for melanoma globally, even though skin cancer is highly preventable. While we all need a bit of sun exposure and vitamin D to stay healthy, over 90% of skin cancer is caused by too much sun. This, however, can be reduced by spending time in places that provide shade. The strength of UV light is expressed by a solar UV index, or a UVI. The World Health Organization recommends that sun protection measures be used when UVI levels are at 3 and above. Annually in Wellington, our region has 127 days where the UVI is equal to or greater than 6. As noted in your 2017 Wellington Play Spaces policy, children aged 5 to 10 years are the main playground users, with the 0 to 5 year age group second, and then the 11 to 12 group third. Preventing episodes of sunburn and overexposure to the sun's UV radiation in childhood is crucial to reducing the incidence of skin cancer later on in life. Suppose the main purposes of play areas are to improve the well-being through promoting the well-being of people, through promoting the physical activity, community connection, and exposure to green space. In that case, it makes sense to also consider shade provision in these areas. Promoting health in some ways seems counterproductive if you are also exposing communities to cancer risk factors. According to your play spaces policy, the top 5 ideas for improvement in play spaces included more shade or shelter. In light of this, pun intended, we would like to make the following recommendations for your consideration in the design and development of the following play spaces, parks, and recreation areas: Kilbirnie Destination Skate Park, Granada North Park Upgrade, Hugh Te Para Park, Frederick Street Urban Park, Cuba Street Playground, and the Frank Kitts Park Playground. We would like to also acknowledge the provision of 208 play areas and approximately 25 free public events to Wellingtonians throughout the year. While I won't address these individually, they are all relevant to mention here as additional areas of opportunity for cancer prevention. Firstly, we ask that you provide some cover in open spaces. As noted in your 2021 to 31 long-term plan, council activities are carried out to maintain or improve the well-being of Wellingtonians and visitors to Wellington. To achieve this plan, you have stated that an important consideration is providing shade over equipment and not just for caregivers. We commend you on this proposal, as shade is one of the most effective forms of sun protection. Good quality shade can reduce an individual's UV exposure by more than 75%. Therefore, a great option for highly frequented public spaces, such as parks and playgrounds, would be to provide appropriate shade. Secondly, we recommend increasing the number of trees to provide shade in these areas. Good tree planting is visually attractive and can help cool urban areas, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, enhance biodiversity, and improve human health and well-being. Trees can also lower the temperature of the surfaces they shade by as much as 10 to 25 degrees. This benefits the environment by reducing CO2 emissions and erosion. Increasing the number of trees will enhance green spaces, which are consistently shown to have a positive impact on well-being. We recommend that trees are grouped in 3 or more so their canopies can weave together, increasing the density of the foliage and providing good quality shade. This also aligns with your social and environmental community outcomes for a city where, and I quote, people and communities can learn, are connected, well-housed, safe and healthy, and where the natural environment is being preserved, biodiversity improved, natural resources used sustainably, and the city is mitigating and adapting to climate change. We commend you on your commitment to climate change action and are pleased to see this reflected through Te Ata Kura, your First to Zero plan. Thirdly, we ask that you invest in built shade options when redeveloping the above parks and playground areas. While the one-off costs of built shade structures may be significant, the impact of cancer is even more costly. We recommend combining both built and natural shade options for caregiver spaces and play equipment. Some examples of this would be choosing equipment that provides shade, like a covered tower or a tube slide, increasing the number of seats in shaded areas or adding new seating to areas that are already in shade, providing shade sails in larger play areas where it would be difficult to cover individual pieces of equipment. Moreover, as access to shade is an equity issue, the Cancer Society Wellington Division strongly requests that you increase shade in low socioeconomic neighbourhoods. We ask that this be prioritised to ensure that shade is fairly distributed to prevent skin cancer in areas that already have compounding cancer risks. Before I touch briefly on smoke-free, vape-free and alcohol-free opportunities in the annual plan, are there any questions regarding the recommendations for shade provision?
Yes, I've had 2 questions already. The first from Councillor Pannett.
Sorry, they're just generic questions. Is that okay? Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, and thank you for the important work that you're doing. It's absolutely critical. Can you just tell me if you've got any evidence about the whether alcohol-free areas actually work? Because that I've looked into, it's a little bit shaky maybe. And also, can you just confirm that the Cancer Society does support our Cycleway program, partly to deal with climate change, but also for cancer prevention reasons? Thank you.
Thank you. Both very good questions. Regarding the alcohol signage, I don't think the research would be from, it wouldn't be from New Zealand, it would be from other countries who are further ahead in their sort of alcohol-free and cancer prevention work. There is a lot of research out there, and we know that any area that is raising awareness of and discouraging people's exposure to cancer risk factors is beneficial for health and well-being. I guess the thing with any prevention approach like this is that it's not necessarily immediate change. The issue that we see with alcohol, much like tobacco years ago, is that part of what needs to change, as well as the environments around us and at a policy and systems level making those changes, we also need social attitudes towards alcohol to change. But part of the role that you would play as council is raising awareness that it is a cancer risk factor and creating environments that are discouraging the use of alcohol. Over time, those approaches, along with people's attitudes changing to alcohol, is going to have great positive impacts, but it is a long-term game, which is why we need to get ahead of the game. We're about 50 years behind where we should be with alcohol. It took a long time to get there with tobacco smoking, but alcohol does cause cancer, and yeah, it's very much a social issue. If you would like specifics on research and data, I'm sure I could get those to you. I can't talk to them now off the top of my head, unfortunately. Do you feel like I've answered? Yep, cool. And the second question, I can't speak specifically to the cycleways, although I will say that eating a healthy diet and keeping physically active also prevents cancer. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I would say that we as a whole do support that. So it is really encouraging to see the council getting behind that and making that happen.
Thanks, Adelaide. We have one more question. We're actually coming close to time, but the next submitter has pulled out, so we'll add another 5 minutes on the clock for you, so we can cover your. So, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. What conversations have you had with our council, perhaps other councils, in terms with direct with our officers, from a urban design planning and our parks and recreation teams, just about when they are designing new playgrounds or streetscapes? Just wondering, have you had an opportunity to engage with them?
I have been at the Cancer Society for a year and a half now. In my time here, I'm not aware of any conversations around that with Wellington City Council. I have had a few brief discussions with the Lower Hutt Mayor Campbell Barry about potentially meeting with his policy team. I know that we have strong relationships with Kapiti Council, and they have committed to working alongside us in the planning and development of their parks and recreation spaces. But in terms of the Wellington region, I'm not aware of any conversations thus far.
Okay, so perhaps if we could ask our officers to get in touch with you to start that engagement, I think that might be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Adelaide. If you want to complete, we've got about just under 4 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. So I would like to use this submission as well as an opportunity to congratulate you on the strength of your smoke-free Wellington action plan, as well as the Wellington alcohol ban in central city areas, including the 9 24/7 alcohol-free zones. It is important to remember, as I've just touched on, that tobacco, smoking and alcohol do cause cancer. So there is no safe level of smoking or drinking. And outdoor secondhand smoke exposure can cause significant harm to health at over 5 metres away from people smoking. So it is just important to keep that in the back of our minds. We would like to encourage the continuation of increasing awareness about these risk factors in public spaces through signage at both alcohol, as obviously they both do cause cancer. As of November 2020, vaping products are now included in the Smoke-Free Environments and Regulated Products Amendment Act. So the Cancer Society recommends investing in new signs that are both smoke-free and vape-free, and adding alcohol-free signs at all skate parks, playgrounds, parks, reserves, and especially in newly developed areas. Any environment that promotes an alcohol-free, smoke-free and vape-free message is beneficial for our communities. We also recommend that smoke-free, vape-free and alcohol-free signage and communications are visible where possible at public events throughout the year. Obviously, lots of events do have alcohol, and we understand that that's not always a viable option, but where possible, or at health events, it would be really great to see those. Once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today and for your consideration. We would really like the opportunity to work alongside you and your team for any cancer prevention approaches in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Adelaide. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now move on to our next submitter, also online. No mai haere mai, Cyrus Free. You have 5 minutes, including time for questions. I think you know this process well.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors and council staff. It's good to be here at the other side of the table. Just very quickly, you got my submission in front of you, and I'm going to be way below the 5 minutes. I just want to support the dog ownership fees and any sort of fees, really, because those who have dogs or use services will need to be paying for the fees rather than ratepayers paying for it. I'm not an expert in that, but it's just an observation. from my point of view. And next point, you probably heard it all before. I might sound like a broken record. It's important to get the basics right, and then focus on the nice to haves, and just expecting councillors to have a whole of city view. And lastly, just one final observation. I just, and I'm happy to be challenged in that. Wellington seems to have lost its mojo. I don't feel like the city is as vibrant as it used to be. There are many reasons behind it. Obviously, we can all blame COVID for that. But I think one of the reasons is lack of parking opportunities. And disclaimer: I love Mother Earth. I don't have a car. I ride to work every day, and not today. I'm working from home today. But it's just that maybe sometimes we should also think of the elderly. Not everyone can walk or bike freely, and it's important to consider the whole of the population when making decisions. That's pretty much it. I do have a comment/question from my ward councillors, Calvert, Chung, and Matthews, about the chip seal, but I'm not sure if it's NZTA or if it's council or if it's combination. But residents of Crofton Downs, where I am, and Nayo, not very happy with how the roads are being chip sealed. It's loud. It's actually caused me to have 2 punctures in my bike and lots of frustration. So yeah, that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, Councillor Chung.
Many thanks for that, and I think that we've solved the riddle of the chip seal. You should have received an email from council officers saying that it was a new type of seal that we're using and a new type of metal, but they've cleaned up all the stuff out of the drains and taken it out. So hopefully that's okay, and you're safe on your bike now.
If you haven't got a question for Cyrus, okay.
If you have any more issues with that, please come back to us. Thanks.
Councillor Calvert.
Mine was on a similar sentiment, but how do you feel about the council's trying to save costs? So it's looking at different forms of chip seal. Do you think this is where we should be directing our attention to?
Saving cost. Thank you, Councillor Calvert and Councillor Chung. And I'm happy that their issue has been resolved. And I can tell that actually my bike rides are a lot smoother these days. I haven't had any puncture since February, I think. So that's good. Saving costs is good, but I think saving costs should happen at areas that are not basic. I think Crofton Downs and Naya deserve smooth asphalt and something that looks good for that area. And there are many areas that costs can be saved. I mean, if it's cost saving across the board, yeah, why not? But I mean, road is a basic service. Everybody uses it. Cars use it. Humans use it. Bike riders use it. So I mean, starting with roads is not probably the starting point. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyrus. I think that's all the questions. So thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and have a great.
All right, and so I believe our next submitter who's here is Thomas. Welcome, no mai Thomas. You can either stand at the podium or you can sit at the table, whatever. Yeah, that's great. And you just need to switch so you've got your green light on your microphone. Beautiful, thank you. And you have 5 minutes, including time for questions. Right. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou katoa. And my name is Thomas Goldberg, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I also want to acknowledge the horrific events at Loafers Lodge yesterday and the mayor's leadership by being there in the early hours of the morning. I really appreciate that. I also want to thank you for all the work that you do here. I understand it's a hard job, and no matter what you decide to do, 70% of Wellingtonians are going to agree with you and 70% are going to disagree with you. But my main issue when I'm here today is the 12.3% rate increase and your reasoning for it. I want to thank the councillors who fought to bring it down from the 17.8 that I believe was originally proposed. We're in the middle of a perfect storm of cost of living crisis and historically high inflation and a recession orchestrated by the Reserve Bank, and the only result so far seems to be record profits for the banks. Ratepayers are already counting every dollar that they have, and the large increase will only add to that pain, I'm afraid. It may not seem like a big increase for councillors and a lot of people in Wellington, but the median income in New Zealand is well below what you make as councillors, so a lot of people will feel it. There's been a lot of talk about the average $8 a week increase, but I live in a very average house, probably below average house, and my increase is going to be a lot more than $8 a week. Council uses the QV to determine the RV of Wellington homes, and the increase that's now been decided on, or proposed, is on top of the increase that we're getting from the number that QV claims my house is worth. And it's easy for me to say that I think you're wrong in your decision, but the onus is on you to justify those decisions, whatever decisions you make. And I don't think you've done a good enough job doing that. The mayor said you can't possibly save any more money, but I think you can try harder. I think there is more money to be saved around with what we do. Like Adrian Orr has admonished the public for still spending money, and I'd love to see the council approaching that same rhetoric. I could possibly understand the increase if the focus was on finishing half-completed projects across the city before we start on new ones. I might even support it if the Safer Cycling project, that is a big number on the list of reasonings for the increase, if it actually made cycling safer in the city. But I'm a cyclist myself. I ride 300 to 400 kilometers a week in and around Wellington. And so cycling safely is very important to me. It's my number one priority. But because in the suburbs we've got gravel roads that are flooded with water from leaking pipes all over the place, cycling is not safer. It's dangerous to ride a bike in Wellington still. Evans Bay to the city has now been underway for years, and while we wait for that to be finished, we have to cross a busy road 5 times, and the road crews are blocking half the bike path with traffic management signs. Just this morning I nearly hit another cyclist coming head on as they came around the sign. So it is very dangerous in the interim period. I think if that stretch was really going to be safe, we should start it and finish it instead of stretching it out over such a long period of time. So I think the small bits of bike path that we're planning in the CBD under this next proposal, they are going to be safe when they're done, but cyclists still have to get there from the suburbs to use them. And while we still have chip seal roads across the region and across the suburbs, cycling in the suburbs is not safely, and a lot of us are just not going to. I heard the previous speaker was saying that he has chip seal issues. I've crashed on loose chip seal because the crews just don't clean it up. They ignore repeated calls to clean it up. And of course, the other major thing is that we've got rivers running down each and every street. Wellington Water asked for $10 million to do what they have to do, and I believe you said no, although that's one of your reasons for raising the rates. And that I found that a little bit baffling. I think simple quality control before signing off on projects would be great, so we don't have to send crews back to the same sites. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you run out to Happy Valley Road or Great Harbour Way and have a look at the work that's been done out there. Now, I have no doubt that all of you do your work to your absolute best abilities and with the best intentions, but every decision that you make in here has real-life decisions for Wellingtonians. And we're already having to make hard decisions between food and utilities and ballet lessons and rugby classes. So when you reseal roads that are in perfect working order because it's been a while, I don't think you can say you're trying hard enough or that you can't save any more money. Your submission process is heavily skewed towards your proposals, in favor of your proposals, but I really do hope that you'll listen to people who disagree with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next submitters are not here, so we can take a short break, and we'll take a 10-minute adjournment. And Thomas, if councillors want to speak with a submitter, we'll be here and having a cup of tea, so we can have a chat. Thank you. including Sam, we have one other submitter who is definitely on their way. So we will hear from Sam and then we may need to take another break. So just apologies, a few people have pulled out this morning. But we will get to Sam, so we won't make him wait. So
on a meter, so that anyone knows me knows I don't like giving money to the council.
Okay, all right, Sam. So you have 5 minutes, including time for questions.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping some of you have read the submission. My biggest draw card here is how do we find different ways to bring in revenue. One of the things I find disgusting about that central government do to councils is they limit the way councils can collect revenue. And then when we get the lovely word of we've got to put up your rates, you get the pitchforks at the front door. So one of the things that also frustrate me as a resident of Newtown is the number of people who feel that they are entitled to use our lovely bus lanes, including one morning that it took me about 4 minutes to drive down the road. The council could have collected $1,500 in fines. So why not we use the tools that we are legally available, the cameras that are sitting in the parking enforcement office, to sit there and discourage this poor quality behaviour, at the same time helping balance our budgets and lessen a rates rise burden by using bus lane enforcement as a tool in there. I worked out in 1 hour a day could potentially bring in $33,000 in fines. Now, I hope we don't end up like a Grafton Bridge scenario in Auckland, where it was $29,000 a day average 5 days a week. But I do believe we should look at this tool to see what other options we can do for revenue collection for the council and what other ways we can sit there and balance the books. The other thing I do, because this is something that I believe a lot of people do complain about rates, we need to encourage people to get the rates rebate, because that is something that's out there. I do know that the property I'm in, the rates have tipped $5,000. I'm a rental, so my landlord wouldn't qualify, but I do know other people who do own their own properties may potentially qualify, and I worked out at about $55,000 a year annual income, you may qualify on about $6,000 a year rates bill. I did know I mentioned submission about water meters. I'm not a big fan of them because they are high fixed costs. But if we did look at long term, I do know that Councillor Brown and I have had an email exchange about smart water meters. If that did come onto the table after Dunedin City Council has done it, I'd possibly say that could be something to relook at that point, because it'll provide more benefit than just revenue collection. And also, one is for when Local Government Conference New Zealand, can we sit there and try and beg government to change the law so we can clip the GST on sales, so we can shift the tax burden from land value to actual proper economic development. So that is something I'd love all your councillors to lobby on behalf of us ratepayers. I think that's a great summary of my submission, and what questions would like to be asked?
We have a question from Councillor Panovich.
Just taking your comment around charging for use of bus lanes, etc. Would you expand that to charging of tolls in general?
If we can pass that through central government legislation, but the only thing I can think we could toll is the second Mount Victoria tunnel, to be honest. Existing infrastructure, I do know there is convention we don't toll. I mean, I do know that if we say 1 week did toll, say if the Auckland Harbour Bridge had it, I believe we would have pitchforks on that particular saying. So, I mean, tolling roads is one thing, but this one is about misuse of lanes. And, I mean, you know, this actually amplifies traffic congestion problems and defeats the purpose of why the bus lane was put in the first place. Because of people, you know, which do it. And the design between the bus lanes there is to sift off the traffic out of the flow at the points of in there and to reduce the number of merge points. So if we're finding them, in this case, $150 a pop, we can hopefully change this behaviour in some places, and we're probably going to have more bus lanes put around Wellington, so this may be a tool that can be used for a few budget cycles down the track.
Councillor O'Neill, you had a question?
Kia ora, Sam. Just wondering if you could expand on, you spoke about switching from land value rates to proper economic development. Could you just expand on the idea?
So as a GST registered business owner, I file a GST return. Most of my income is traded in the Wellington City Council boundaries. It is more of a change in the way how GST is calculated, because it's based on the actual sales that are happening in the area, not the land value. A great example would be is if I go to Tamanui and use the public toilets, the Tamanui District Council will pay rates towards it, but when I shop at a Tamanui business, they won't see a single cent paid towards it. But if there was a shift in the way of GST collection, that can change the way it's been. I think I put in the percentage of what I would like it to be, and we can also use the liquor licensing district system for the suffix, considering the numbers are already there. I don't know what Wellington's number is, but Haratua District Council's 040. So it is, there is a number system in place we can piggyback off.
All right, and I'll take one last question from Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Sam. I absolutely agree with you about the bus lanes. Now, do you think that there are other areas that we could actually tighten up on our enforcement? Because, I mean, you're out on the road a lot of the time, so you can actually see these things. So do you think that there are other areas, like the parking issue? Should we actually increase the parking charges, or should we increase the enforcement of disabled parks? Have you actually seen any evidence of that?
I'm part of a Facebook group about disabled car parks, and people do complain about that. If we could shift to automated enforcement on those particular occasions, I'm not sure what the cost will be, because the big thing is the bus lane one was suggested because we've got the existing gear, it wouldn't be capital infrastructure to put in. But if we could automate, say, disabled car parks, that would be something in there if you basically pull in there, effectively don't have a permit in there, have a leeway time, obviously, in case you're dropping off someone who is on crutches and then pulling away, that wouldn't be appropriate. But if you're someone who's using it as a convenient car park on public land, that could be a tool. But I'm not sure how quick and effective it would be, because at the moment we send out parking wardens. So if we can automate that, say through surveillance cameras and APRN technology, that can be done. But I do believe that we also need a business case to see what cost it will be to the benefit it will receive. And the one thing I'd love to do is if we could sit there and pin them on private land, but that might be easier said than done, because that's actually where the biggest problem of disabled car park poachers are. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sam. We appreciate you taking the time to come in. Thank you.
Well, as I say, we need to balance the budget. I can't see what we can cut, but I can see what we can bring in.
Thank you, Sam. And I would like to, I know you've just come in the door, but I would like to welcome our final from the Haratua Park Committee. Welcome. And you'll have 10 minutes. I know you've been here before, including time for questions. Nau mai, haere mai.
Starting now. Tēnā koutou katoa e hui mai nei I tēnei rā, ko Hena toku ingoa, ko Ngati Maniapoto toku iwi, ko Dan Rawa, ko Christian oku kaimahi, e mahi ana mautou ki Hui Te Para Committee, ko te kaupapa o tēnei hui, ko te kōrero ko Hui Te Para Park. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Good morning all. Obviously we're aware we are your last one for the morning, so we'll try and whip through this presentation pretty quickly. We do have a bit to get through. So we're from the Hui Te Para Park Committee, and we're the ones who've been pushing this park through for the last few years. It's obviously been a real big passion project for us, and we're really excited to give you guys an update on where we're at and an opportunity to kind of complete this exciting project. So I know there is a mix of councillors here who will be familiar with the park already, and others who have joined the council who will not have had much to do with us in the past. So we'll just do a quick overview to start with. I can see the slides aren't really working right now. Oh, something's working. So as you'll be aware, Lower Bay has changed a lot in the last 10 years. It's a real destination now. The foot traffic's exploded. We've got a lot more businesses, a lot more people entering the area. There's a huge growth, and the foot traffic obviously is taking off. And what we're trying to do is really bring some more facilities and amenities to the area. We're particularly focused on the eastern end of the beach, down where Spruce Goose is and by the airport. As you can see from these slides, you can get an idea of the location of where the park is. So right now, it is pretty much an empty slot. There's just some grass and next to a car park. And we really see this as an opportunity to really liven this area up. You know, it's already packed just with people walking, hanging out from surfing and that sort of thing. So what we're talking about here is something that's a really community-led project. We've spent a lot of time engaging with the community to what they want, and we've designed that project to transform that eastern end of the beach. It's about an 800-metre walk to the nearest toilets at the moment. If you're down there, you've got to go all that way out down the other end. And so what we're lacking is those basic facilities, but also an area that, you know, you can really bring the community together, get families, get visitors, and we're really looking to turn this into something of a regional landmark and really kind of get a visual gateway to the city, just really liven this area up. So you can see from this render here, this is what we would really like the park to look like if it's completed. You see the toilets are underneath this viewing platform. You've got spiral staircases, and then moving along, you're going to have a grassy area with a very family-friendly area, picnicking, a pump track, and there'll be a half pipe and these sorts of things there. So it's a really recreational space, but the big thing for us is that we really want it to be accessible for all. We want to really get that connection from the street to the beach. There's a lot of people who have access difficulties in Wellington, and what we're looking for here is to bring them into this part of the community so they can get sea views, they can feel that sea breeze, you know, they can get really connected to the area. Where at the moment you've got car parking, you've got dunes, you've got a wall running along the beach that kind of denies them that visibility and that kind of connected feeling to the area. So I'll hand over to Dan, who can talk you through some of the project history and where we're heading now.
Thank you. As we mentioned before, it's a community-conceived project. We went out to survey through broader Wellington and had a huge response. We got 500 people respond to the survey, coming back with all sorts of ideas about what Wellingtonians wanted for Lower Bay. As Christian alluded to, Lower Bay is not just about the Lower Bay community, it's actually a hugely popular Wellington destination. And we saw that in the survey with who the respondents were. From that, we were able to form a concept, and then we had a series of community meetings to establish what would actually be included in the park and how do we accommodate those broader needs. Next one. So just quickly, for those who aren't familiar with the actual park design currently, starting from the bottom left is the corner, Briscoe's corner. We've got the pump track, and then we've got an accessible ramp leading up to the viewing platform, skate ramp, and then the toilets below. Stage one was approved by WCC in the long-term plan, and that's now well underway. We're about to go to tender and to find a contractor and get that on site very, very soon. The community has identified that the boardwalk, which is the red line there, is incredibly important to make stage one work successfully, and is currently out there fundraising, actively looking for 500k through grants and community fundraising to get that part to enable that basic amenity to be met.
We're here today. Opportunity to complete a genuine community and council project. We understand that financial decisions can't be made based on opinion, so have reviewed the project against the council's values and social outcomes. The council's current vision for an inclusive, sustainable and creative capital for people to live, work and play, and social outcomes where children and young people are thriving in diverse and inclusive neighbourhoods. Communities and cultures are connected, thriving and have a sense of identity. and enjoy access to open public spaces, and our older, disabled or most vulnerable communities are supported and connected. We believe the founding vision and objectives for Hui Te Para Park strongly align with the Council's own vision and outcomes for the community. One of our main objectives for the park is to provide a strong beach connection for those who don't currently have access to it.
So this is a really important point. We got a lot of feedback from people who are differently abled, who are in wheelchairs. Going backwards?
I don't know, let's do it.
We'll keep going. There's really a massive issue with difficulty in actually getting access down to the beach. And even for the elderly, once they get to the beach, there's nowhere to sit in a sheltered area. This particular photo here shows you the experience of a person in a wheelchair, where their engagement with the beach currently is a wall and then established dunes. So for us, solving this was really important, and the solution we came up with was the viewing platform itself. And this will enable people to gather with their families, regardless of their age or their abilities, and to get it, and to actually be in a place where it's genuinely sheltered from the predominant wind. Great sun location, picnic tables, and they'll have an amazing connection with the broader bay and the park itself and the airport.
Yeah, you can try and get that work. Okay. So just to wrap up, I know we've only got a couple of minutes, so we'd like to take some questions. So basically with the viewing platform and ramp, the park fully aligns with the Council's vision and social outcomes. It will liven up that visitor gateway. And we know that in a tight fiscal environment, like these park facilities and the positive social benefits that come from it would really deliver a big bang for buck for Wellington. So the reality is that the ramp plus the viewing platform has been costed out at about $1.3 million. It's a significant chunk of change, but we also know that it's not that big when you think about what we can deliver in the next financial year. Something that we can actually get done, and it's something that the community will be able to use very quickly given where we're at with this project now. We are in a position where we're going to be able to get moving pretty quickly, and obviously we know there's cost efficiencies involved with that. So we're here just to give you this update, but also to put that ask on the table and say, you know, we obviously know the environment that we're dealing with here, but we would really love to see this park pushed all the way through as soon as possible.
So just to quickly conclude on that, in terms of how imminent this potentially is, if the funding was made available to us, the council officers have already agreed that the procurement process that we're about to go down for stage one, they would be able to enable that same contractor to effectively tack on as a variation the viewing platform works. The consultant works is all but done for the viewing platform, and so effectively what would happen is stage one would commence. The last consultation would be wrapped up for the viewing platform, and as they finish stage one, we'd roll into doing the viewing platform, so that was all completed in one construction process. And that would have massive benefits in terms of disruption, but also would be the most cost-efficient way of doing this, because if we do it in two quite separate stages, we're going to begin some inefficiencies in site establishment and also in terms of inflation of costs over time. Thank you.
Now, I do have several councillors who have put their hands up to ask questions. Could I ask that the questions in particular be very concise, and similarly, it would be great to have concise answers as well. Councillor Randall. Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much for this, and I really like this proposal, despite having a reputation of being an anxious person.
Right,
so
question.
Can you tell me if this land is actually council-owned, or is...
Yeah, it's council-owned. It's currently road reserve, but used as open space.
Okay, and are there toilets there at present in Lyall Bay? There aren't.
They're a kilometre away.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
If we provide you with the additional funding, when would the full project be up and running?
It would depend on contractor program, but if we said that we were going out to procurement with a contractor in the next, say, 3 months, effectively it would be locking in that contractor and then hearing from the contractor what their lead time is and then what their construction program is. But we're looking at completing the actual project early next year.
Councillor Paul. Pauiwi Hohaya.
Kia ora, thank you. It looks really good. I just have one quick question. To what extent have you involved mana whenua groups, particularly Taranaki Whānui and Ngāti Toa?
Yeah, great. We've been very conscious of the importance of involving mana whenua in the process. They've been involved right from day one in terms of the naming Hui Te Para, and we've gone beyond the Wellington group, but some of the more local iwis as well. But also as part of the design process, we've been working directly with Leslie and mana whenua in that exercise of appropriate design decisions and going forward what narrative and interpretation we can include in the park itself. So it's a heavy part of what we've been doing. Does it help?
Councillor Calvert.
So if we were to grant you this money, and have you got a view of where savings could be made in our budget, and in probably in particular in the Lau Bay, Kilburnie area? I mean, what's the I'm just trying to say if you could consider the trade-off in terms of would it be if we do this, but we can't do something else.
Yeah, okay. I think that is. I don't know what else is posed for Lower Bay. We haven't seen much investment in Lower Bay over the last decade. So I would suggest that what's more important from our perspective is the park has been strongly supported by Wellingtonians, not just the eastern suburbs. And as we've identified today, this really aligns with your core vision and values and outcomes. And so I would be looking more broadly at the long-term plan and saying what projects do we have on the table currently that don't align with those objectives and outcomes, and that's where savings can be made, because this is going to have a significant impact immediately, and it's going to be a long-term gain for Wellington in general. Okay.
That's come to the end of the questions. Thank you, councillors, for making them short. And I just want to thank you. I think I can speak for all of us when I say we continue to be very impressed by the work that you present to us. And yeah, we're all very grateful. And it's good to see you again. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right, councillors. Could I grab a seconder for the motion, Councillor McNulty? Thank you. At the corner of my eye, that we receive the information. We hear the oral submitters and thank them for their submissions. Is there any? Yeah, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I just. I thank you for the submitters coming in, and I'm presuming that's the end of our submissions, oral submissions. I'm actually really concerned that many people have chosen not to come to this council to speak, and wonder why that is the case. And I still don't think we've actually heard how many submissions we've actually had. I know I've heard anecdotally.
We'll get a full briefing on the engagement this afternoon in the workshop. Thank you.
So really, just for the sake of roughly 4 hours of submissions, given what's being proposed, really surprised that we haven't had more having a say.
Okay, if there's no further debate, we'll put that motion and vote on it. Thank you.
I'm voting yes. Sorry, I've got a few technology problems.
Thanks, Councillor Free. Okay, that is passed, and I'll close the meeting with a karakia. Unuhia, 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 ki te uru tapunui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua. I te ara takatu. Koia rā e rongo, whakairia a ki ki runga. Kia wātia, Aira Kuawatia. Councillors, we're back at 12:30. Just so you know, lunch will not be provided, but you have an hour in which to procure your lunch.